Rich Viking pretends to be a poor fisherman to find true love. Snow fell softly on the dark, storm-tossed sea, and the little village below clung to the rocky shore as if it were holding its breath. Fishermen hurried along the narrow paths, carrying nets heavy with the day's catch, and smoke spiraled from chimneys, promising warmth and shelter against the biting cold. Far above the village, standing on the edge of the cliffs, was a man whose presence seemed almost unnatural against the wild landscape. His dark cloak whipped around him, and his golden hair shone faintly in the pale winter sun. His eyes, sharp and calculating, watched the village below with a mixture of curiosity and something deeper, longing. This man was Jarl Eirik Stormborn, heir to a powerful Viking clan, a man whose wealth could buy kingdoms, whose word could command armies. But here, far from gilded halls and burning torches of celebration, he was just a man of the sea. Well, he would try to be. Eirik had grown tired of courtly life, of the constant flattery that always came with hidden motives. Every smile, every bow, every hand extended to him seemed to come with strings attached. He wanted someone who could see him as he truly was, not as a title or a treasure chest. So, leaving behind his golden halls and luxurious garments, he disguised himself as a poor fisherman. He took worn clothes, rough boots, and a weather-beaten coat. He left his ring, his sword, and even his name behind. The villagers, simple folk who had seen many travelers pass through, barely noticed him at first. He moved among them quietly, learning to haul nets, mend ropes, and read the shifting moods of the sea. Every day, he felt the salt on his skin and the sting of cold water, reminding him that life was harder than any feast hall had ever demanded. And yet he felt more alive than he had in years. Among the villagers was Astrid, a young woman with hair like the dark waves and eyes sharp as winter ice. She moved through the village with confidence, her hands always busy with work, her voice firm yet warm. Astrid had grown up with tales of heroes and monsters, of gods who punished pride and blessed courage. She could spot dishonesty like a hawk spots prey, and she was not easily fooled. From the moment she saw the stranger, she felt a pull she could not explain. He was awkward with the nets, fumbling yet determined, and there was a strength in his hands that seemed too precise for a true fisherman. Astrid studied him from the market and the docks, noting how his eyes lingered on the waves, not the chatter of the villagers. Eirik, for his part, was equally drawn to her. He watched her from a distance, memorizing the way she laughed at the children who ran past her, how she knelt to repair a broken net, and how her gaze seemed to pierce through everything he tried to hide. He longed to speak to her, to understand her heart, yet he feared that any word might reveal too much. Days passed, and the stranger became a small part of the village's rhythm. He helped with fishing, carried wood, and shared meals by the fire. Yet he remained quiet, observing, listening, learning the lives of the people around him. Eirik found that in simplicity, there was a purity he had never known in his golden halls. And yet, the more he saw Astrid, the more he realized that the heart's trials were never simple. One evening, as the sky burned pink and orange with the setting sun, Eirik followed Astrid to the cliffs, where the waves crashed against the rocks below. She often came here to be alone, to listen to the rhythm of the sea and think. He stayed hidden at first, watching her silhouette against the dying light. Her hands clutched a piece of driftwood and her face was serene, yet her eyes were distant, as if reading thoughts invisible to others. "Why do you always come here alone?" Eirik asked softly, stepping from the shadows. His voice startled her, yet she did not turn in fear. "You should not sneak up on people," she said, though her lips curved in the faintest smile. Her eyes studied him, curious and cautious. "I do not mean to sneak," he replied, keeping his hands at his sides. I just wanted to understand the sea as you do." Astrid's gaze lingered on him. "The sea is patient," she said. "It gives to those who respect it, but it can take everything in an instant. Are you patient?" "I can try," Eirik said, and something in his tone made her frown in thought. There was an honesty there, a vulnerability he did not show to anyone else. Days turned to weeks, and their paths crossed often. They fished together, repaired nets, and shared small conversations about life and the weather, about tales from the old gods, and the strange shadows that sometimes lingered in the cliffs at night. Astrid found herself laughing more than usual, feeling warmth for the stranger whose hands were rough but whose eyes held something tender. Eirik, too, found his heart pulled in ways he had not expected. The more he tried to remain humble, the more he realized that his own strength, his own pride, lingered beneath the surface, a constant struggle. He wanted to reveal himself to her, to let her see the man he truly was, yet he feared that honesty might shatter the fragile trust that had begun to grow between them. Then came the storm. The sky darkened with clouds the color of iron, and the wind screamed like a living thing. Villagers hurried to secure boats and homes, but Eirik found Astrid by the shore, struggling with a small fishing boat caught in the rising waves. Without thinking, he ran to her, gripping the ropes and pulling with all his strength. "Hold on," he shouted over the roar of the storm. Astrid's hair whipped around her face, her hands slippery with water and fear. Together, they managed to right the boat, but a sudden wave tipped them both into the icy sea. Eirik's arms found her instinctively, holding her close as they were tossed by the cold, merciless water. He fought against the waves, his every muscle straining, until he pulled her to the shore, gasping and shivering. They collapsed onto the wet sand, soaked to the bone, hearts racing. Astrid looked up at him, eyes wide with fear and gratitude. Who are you?" she whispered, shivering. Eirik's own chest heaved. He could not answer with his true name, not yet. "Just someone who cares," he said softly, his hand brushing wet hair from her face. He felt a sudden weight in his pocket, the golden ring he had hidden beneath his coat. In the struggle, a glimpse of it shone in the fading light. Astrid caught the flash. Her eyes widened. That is no fisherman's ring," she said, a mix of awe and confusion in her voice. Her heart raced, a storm within her matching the storm outside. Eirik quickly hid it, his face calm, though inside his heart thundered. He had hoped to remain hidden, to be ordinary, to let her love him for himself. But now, the veil was thinning, and he realized with a pang of both fear and longing that their bond might soon be tested in ways neither of them could foresee. The waves crashed around them, relentless and powerful, as if the sea itself knew the secrets hidden beneath the surface. Astrid sat up slowly, staring at him, her mind struggling to understand what she had glimpsed. Eirik helped her to her feet, the storm battering them both, yet their connection held, fragile but undeniable. As they made their way back to the village, wet and trembling, neither spoke much. Words seemed small against the weight of what had just passed. Yet in silence, a promise was made, that they would face the coming days together, whatever truths might rise from the depths. And as Eirik watched Astrid move ahead, a spark of fear and hope alike stirred in his chest. He knew that the ring had been seen, that the mask he had worn was slipping, and that the path to true love would be far more treacherous than any storm the sea could muster. Above them, the sky darkened and lightning flashed across the horizon. The sea roared in answer, and somewhere in the distance, the first whispers of fate began to stir, threading through the waves, carrying the promise of trials, secrets, and the undeniable pull of hearts destined to collide. Eirik tightened his cloak around himself, hiding both ring and truth, and in the echo of the storm he whispered a vow he did not dare speak aloud before. And in that moment, with the wind biting and the village lights flickering behind them, both Eirik and Astrid felt the weight of destiny pressing close, binding them together in a story that had only just begun. The village had recovered from the storm, but the air remained heavy with tension. Salt hung in the wind, and the snow, though soft and white, carried a chill that seemed sharper than the season demanded. Villagers spoke in hushed tones about the night the sea had almost claimed them, and a subtle unease lingered, as if the storm had not passed but only whispered its warning. Astrid could not forget the moment she had seen the glint of gold beneath the stranger's cloak. Eirik had insisted it was nothing, a simple trinket, yet her mind would not allow her to forget. Questions swirled like waves in her thoughts. Who was this man? Why did he hide in the guise of a fisherman? And most troubling of all, why did her heart respond to him so fiercely, despite the doubt that clawed at her mind? Eirik, for his part, felt the weight of her gaze more keenly than ever. Every glance from her seemed to pierce through his carefully woven disguise, finding the truth that he wished to keep buried. He worked alongside her each day, mending nets, hauling fish, and tending small fires along the docks. Yet even in the simplicity of labor, he felt the relentless pull of his own fears. He wanted to reveal himself, to let her see who he truly was, but he feared that the revelation might shatter the fragile bond that had begun to grow between them. The festival of the winter solstice approached, a time when the villagers celebrated the old gods and the return of light. Fires were lit along the shore, and songs filled the air with hope and reverence. Eirik watched the preparations with quiet interest, noting how Astrid moved among the villagers, helping with the bonfires, arranging food, and laughing with those around her. Every action, every smile seemed to illuminate her in a way that no fire could. That evening, the two of them found themselves alone on the cliffs once more. The aurora painted the sky with green and violet streaks, and the snow beneath their feet glittered like scattered starlight. Eirik handed Astrid a small bundle of driftwood, which she used to start a tiny fire between the rocks. They sat side by side, the silence between them filled with the gentle crackle of flames. "You move as though you belong here," Astrid said quietly, her eyes reflecting the dancing light. "But there is a weight in your steps, a shadow in your gaze. Who are you really?" Eirik hesitated, the words tangling in his throat. For a long moment, he merely watched the aurora as if the swirling colors might give him courage. "I am someone trying to understand the world as it truly is," he said finally. "Not as a lord, not as a man of wealth, but as a man who walks the same paths as you." Astrid frowned slightly. "That is not an answer." Her voice was firm, yet beneath it lingered a note of curiosity, even tenderness. "You are clever, and your hands know strength. You speak with knowledge I would not expect from a fisherman. I feel there is more to you than you allow me to see." Eirik swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her everything, to show her the man beneath the disguise, yet fear gripped him. He feared that his revelation might make her turn away, that the golden halls and the name of Stormborn would overshadow any bond they had formed. Still, he could not remain silent forever. The following days brought small victories and delicate tensions. Eirik's presence among the villagers became more familiar, and Astrid's suspicion mingled with attraction. Together, they repaired nets, hauled boats, and shared small stories of the sea and the skies. Every moment they spent together deepened the connection between them, yet the unspoken truths hovered like a shadow, always present, always waiting. Then, rumors arrived, carried on the wind like the first flakes of winter snow. Travelers spoke of a powerful lord searching for a bride, a man of wealth and status whose presence would bring honor or danger. The villagers whispered, and Eirik felt his disguise tremble. He was no longer simply a fisherman. The weight of his true identity pressed against the fragile illusion he had created. One evening, a messenger arrived at the village, riding through the snow with a letter bound in leather. Eirik intercepted it, knowing instinctively that it bore news of his clan. The seal was unmistakable, the emblem of Stormborn. His heart tightened as he read the words. His family was sending envoys to seek him, unaware of his chosen disguise, to bring him back to his hall. Astrid noticed the change in him immediately. He had always been careful to control his expressions, yet now his features flickered with tension, worry, and something almost like sorrow. She approached him quietly, placing a hand on his arm. "You carry a burden," she said softly. "Tell me, I will not judge." Eirik met her gaze, and for a moment the weight of centuries of tradition, power, and expectation pressed down on him. "There are forces I cannot escape," he said finally, "secrets that are mine alone to bear. But know this, my time here, with you, it is as real as any truth I have ever known." Astrid studied him, feeling the sincerity in his words yet sensing the hidden truths that remained. "You cannot hide forever," she said. "The world is patient, yes, but it sees all eventually." As the festival approached, the village prepared for the great feast. Fires were lit along the shore, and music filled the air with hope. Villagers danced, sang, and celebrated the return of light to their harsh winter world. Eirik and Astrid worked side by side, their hands brushing occasionally, sending sparks of warmth through the cold air. Yet the shadow of doubt lingered between them, unspoken but powerful. The night of the festival arrived, and the village was alive with color, sound, and motion. Eirik, careful to maintain his guise, joined in the celebrations, laughing and sharing stories. Yet he felt every glance from Astrid as a dagger of longing and fear. She moved through the crowd with grace, her laughter ringing out like a bell in the night, and Eirik felt a pang of desire to reveal the truth, to show her the man behind the fisherman's mask. Then it happened. Among the dancers and firelight, a man approached, his eyes sharp and knowing. He wore the emblem of Stormborn, and his gaze fell upon Eirik with recognition. In an instant, the village seemed to hold its breath, the music and laughter fading into silence. Astrid caught the look, her eyes widening as the stranger's voice rang out. "Eirik Stormborn," the man said, his tone both commanding and familiar. "We have sought you long, your family awaits." The name struck Astrid like a blow. Her mind raced, and her heart pounded in a rhythm she could barely control. The fisherman she had come to know, the man whose hands and eyes had stirred something deep within her, was no ordinary villager. He was a lord, a jarl, a man of wealth and power beyond her imagining. Eirik felt the weight of the moment press down on him. He could no longer hide behind his disguise, could no longer pretend that the simple life of the village was all he had. The truth stood before Astrid, undeniable and brilliant as the aurora above. He looked at her, searching for any hint of fear, anger, or rejection in her eyes. Astrid's gaze was a mixture of awe, confusion, and something darker, hurt. She turned away for a moment, struggling to contain her emotions, then met his eyes again, her voice trembling. Why did you hide this from me?" Eirik took a step closer, his hands raised in quiet surrender. "I wanted to know your heart, not your respect for my name or my power," he said. "I wanted to find someone who loved me for who I am, not who I was born to be. I never meant to deceive you." The festival around them seemed distant now, a blur of firelight and shadows. Only the two of them existed, caught in a moment of revelation, where trust and longing collided with fear and doubt. Eirik's heart ached with the possibility of losing her, yet he also felt a flicker of hope that the bond they had forged could survive this storm of truth. Astrid's hands trembled and she stepped back, struggling to find words. I need time," she whispered. Her gaze lingered on him, searching for something she could not yet name, before she turned and walked toward the edge of the cliffs, the snow crunching beneath her feet. Eirik watched her go, his own heart heavy yet determined. He knew that the revelation of his true identity had changed everything, yet he also understood that love, if it was to endure, must withstand the trials of truth and trust. The aurora above continued to dance, green and violet streaks painting the sky in colors that seemed almost alive. The waves crashed against the cliffs below, relentless and powerful, as if echoing the storm that raged within Eirik's heart. He tightened his cloak around him, hiding the last symbol of his noble birth, and whispered a vow into the wind. "I will earn your trust, Astrid," he promised. "No matter the trials, no matter the storms, I will prove that my heart is yours alone." And in that moment, as the village celebrated below and the aurora burned above, both Eirik and Astrid faced the uncertain path ahead. Secrets had been revealed, hearts had been tested, and the shadow of doubt loomed between them. Yet the pull of destiny, like the tide against the shore, was impossible to resist. The storm was over, but a new one had begun, not of wind or sea, but of hearts, trust, and the unyielding force of love struggling to find its place in a world of power, shadow, and longing. The wind carried a strange chill that no fire could warm, twisting through the village like a quiet warning. The snow, pale and soft, seemed heavier now, as though it pressed secrets into the earth. Villagers whispered of strange shadows in the cliffs and the distant cries of seabirds that did not sound natural. The festival had passed, but a new tension lingered, heavier than any storm before. Astrid stayed mostly in her small cottage near the shore, trying to understand the turmoil in her heart. Eirik's revelation still burned like a quiet flame she could not extinguish. She had learned that the fisherman she had come to know was a jarl, a man of great wealth and power. That knowledge left her torn. She was drawn to him still, yet she felt the sting of betrayal. How could she trust someone who had hidden so much from her? Eirik did not give up. Each day he visited her, offering simple gestures. Help with chores, firewood stacked neatly at her door, warm fish stews in heavy bowls. Yet he never forced conversation, never demanded forgiveness. He let her space to feel what she must feel. But he could see her struggle, the hesitation in her steps, the distant look in her eyes. Each small sign of distrust cut him deeper than any blade ever could. Then the strange occurrences began. Nets vanished from boats, only to reappear tangled in unnatural shapes. Fires flickered with green light, then died suddenly. Shadows in the forest seemed to shift and whisper in languages no one recognized. Even the sea, which had always been familiar, churned with a restless energy, waves rising higher than any storm should allow. One evening, as Eirik and Astrid gathered driftwood along the cliffs, they noticed a figure standing atop the rocks across a small inlet. It was tall and cloaked, and the snow seemed to part around it unnaturally. The figure did not move, yet its presence pressed on them like a weight. Astrid shivered, not from the cold but from the sense that they were being watched. "The old stories," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Do you remember them? Of the curse that binds a family if trust is broken, of spirits that guard what is sacred." Eirik nodded, his jaw tightening. He had heard such tales often in his hall, stories of gods and ancient magic, but he had always thought them distant, irrelevant. Now, facing the strange events around the village, he felt the weight of old legends pressing close. Perhaps they were not just stories. Perhaps the past had a way of catching those who dared to challenge fate. As the days passed, the curse made itself clearer. Villagers grew sick without reason. Fish disappeared from nets, and crops withered even under careful care. Even the animals seemed restless, their eyes reflecting a fear they could not explain. Eirik realized that the curse was testing something greater than strength. It demanded trust, devotion, and the willingness to sacrifice what one held most dear. Astrid confronted Eirik one evening in the forest near the cliffs. Snowflakes danced in the air around them, catching in her hair and eyelashes. "Tell me the truth," she demanded, her voice steady but trembling. "I will not guess any more. What power do you carry? What danger comes with your presence?" Eirik met her gaze, and for the first time he felt completely vulnerable. "I do not carry power alone," he said slowly. "But I come from a family bound by old magic, by oaths and bloodlines. The curse, it is tied to trust, to the hearts of those we care for. And it is here now because I have hidden myself, because I have feared losing what I want most, your heart." Astrid's eyes softened, but fear still lingered. "So it tests us?" she asked. "It tests trust and punishes doubt." "Yes," Eirik said, taking a careful step closer. "It will not yield easily. and it will demand something from both of us." For days, they sought guidance from the village elder, a woman named Solveig, who was known for her knowledge of old ways. Solveig lived in a small hut filled with herbs, bones, and relics of magic long past. She listened to their story, nodding slowly as if she had expected this. "The curse awakens when hearts falter," Solveig said, her voice low and steady. "It tests love, loyalty, and courage. To survive it, you must face the trial together. One must surrender pride, one must face fear. Only then can it be broken." Eirik and Astrid exchanged glances. The weight of her words settled over them like snow. Pride, fear, trust. They would need to give these freely without guarantee of reward. Their hearts would be tested in ways they could not imagine. The first trial came swiftly. A night of unnatural darkness fell over the cliffs, and the winds carried voices in languages long forgotten. Astrid felt her strength waning, a cold that reached deep into her bones. Eirik stayed close, holding her hand, speaking her name, offering warmth through touch and words. Yet even as he did, he realized that love alone was not enough. The curse demanded sacrifice. They were led to the sea, to a cove hidden beneath jagged cliffs. The waves crashed violently and the water glimmered with an unnatural green light. Eirik understood immediately. This was the trial. To save Astrid, he must surrender the comfort of his title, his wealth, and the life he had known. Only in humility in the act of giving could the curse be challenged. Astrid, too, faced her own trial. She had grown to trust him, yet the revelation of his true identity left a scar on her heart. Could she forgive him fully? Could she accept him as he truly was, both a lord and a man who loved her with no pretense? Doubt gnawed at her soul, and the curse seized upon it, manifesting in the waves and winds around them. Hours passed, the storm unrelenting. Eirik stripped the symbols of his nobility from himself, the cloak, the ring, the sword. He knelt before Astrid, offering his heart openly, without shield or artifice. "I am nothing without you," he said. "I will surrender all if it means I can walk this path with you honestly." Astrid's eyes filled with tears. She had feared betrayal, yet here he was, vulnerable and sincere, willing to give up everything for trust and love. She reached for him, touching his face, feeling the warmth beneath the cold, and whispered, I believe in you. I will trust you." The moment of surrender rippled through the air. The wind stilled, the unnatural darkness lifted slightly, and the waves seemed to bow, as if acknowledging the courage and honesty between them. The first stage of the curse had passed, yet they knew the trial was far from over. Solveig's voice echoed in the night as if carried on the wind. "The heart's test has begun. You have taken the first step. But the final challenge waits, one that will demand both courage and sacrifice from both of you." Days passed in careful preparation. Eirik and Astrid worked together, mending what had been broken by the curse: nets, boats, and the trust of the villagers. Every act of kindness, every shared meal, and every conversation strengthened the bond between them. Yet the shadow of the next trial loomed. Then, on a quiet morning, Astrid fell ill. It began with shivering, a fever that made her skin burn and weakness that stole her breath. Eirik rushed to her side, his heart heavy. The curse, it seemed, punished doubt and tested devotion simultaneously. Her illness was a sign that the next trial had begun, and it would demand all his courage. He stayed by her side, tending her with care, whispering stories of the sea and the stars to comfort her. Nights passed with the cold pressing in, the wind howling outside, and Eirik feared the worst. Yet he remained steadfast, refusing to leave her, refusing to let fear rule his actions. The villagers watched in awe and fear as the Jarl of Stormborn, once distant and commanding, knelt before the woman he loved, a stranger no longer, wholly vulnerable. His power, wealth, and status meant nothing in the face of the curse. Only his devotion, courage, and honesty could see them through. Astrid's eyes opened slowly one evening, the fever breaking at last. She reached for Eirik, her hand trembling, and he clasped it firmly, holding her close. "You stayed," she whispered, tears glistening. "Even when it was hard, even when the curse struck, you stayed." Eirik nodded, his own eyes wet with emotion. "I will stay," he said. "Through all trials, through all storms, I will not fail you. We face this together." For the first time, both understood the depth of the trial they faced. It was not only about survival or even about love. It was about trust, sacrifice, and the courage to face fear without faltering. Only together could they break the curse completely. The night stretched long, and the aurora above shimmered like the eyes of the gods themselves, watching, testing, and waiting. The next trial was close, but Eirik and Astrid had taken their first steps. In each other's eyes, they found the strength to endure, and a spark of hope that could guide them through the darkness. And so, beneath the cold stars and the whispering wind, two hearts bound by destiny prepared for the challenge that would test them more than any storm, any sea, or any secret could. The curse had awakened, but so had their courage, their devotion, and the love that would shape the trials to come. The dawn broke over the jagged cliffs, spilling pale light across the snow-dusted village and the restless sea. The storm that had raged within hearts and waves alike seemed to hold its breath. A quiet, tense calm had settled, but both Eirik and Astrid knew it was only the calm before the final test. Astrid lay on a small bed in her cottage, the fever that had gripped her slowly easing, though weakness still clung to her like shadows. Eirik remained at her side, his hand clasping hers, steady and warm. He had refused to leave, even for a moment, knowing that their hearts' endurance would decide the fate of the curse. Outside, the wind stirred the snow, whispering through the trees and cliffs, carrying with it the faint, haunting voices of the old magic that had awakened. The curse was not gone. It was waiting, watching, and ready to strike again. Eirik understood that this final trial would require all his strength, not the strength of his arms or wealth, but the strength of his heart. "Eirik," Astrid whispered, her voice fragile, "what must we do? How can we end this?" He held her gaze, seeing both fear and determination reflected there. "We face it together," he said firmly. "No secrets, no disguises, only truth, only trust." She nodded slowly, the weight of understanding settling over her. "Then we will meet it, whatever comes." The sea outside churned violently, waves crashing against the cliffs with a power that seemed beyond nature. The aurora above shimmered, streaking green and violet across the sky, as if the gods themselves watched from afar. Eirik and Astrid stepped outside, hand in hand, their breaths visible in the cold air. Every step they took toward the cliffs felt like a step into legend, a journey both perilous and sacred. At the cliff's edge, the final trial awaited. The sea below glimmered with a strange, green light, and the winds carried whispers of ancient voices. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and imposing, yet made of shifting light and mist. It was the spirit of the curse, a guardian of the old magic that bound Eirik's family. Its eyes glowed with cold fire, observing the two who dared to face it. "You seek to break what has endured for centuries," the spirit said, its voice echoing like the waves and the wind together. "Do you understand the cost? Do you know what must be given to earn freedom?" Eirik stepped forward, his hands holding Astrid's tightly. "We do," he said, his voice unwavering. "We understand that love, trust, and courage are worth more than wealth, pride, or power. We are ready to face the cost together." The spirit's form swirled around them, testing, probing, seeking doubt. Astrid felt a chill in her heart, but she held onto Eirik's hand, letting the warmth of his trust anchor her. "We are not afraid," she whispered, more to herself than to the spirit. "We face this as one." The trial began. Waves of wind and water struck them, as if the sea itself had become a wall of resistance. Shadows of doubt appeared before them, showing visions of fear. Eirik losing his power and status, Astrid betrayed, the village destroyed. Each vision was vivid, designed to break their courage and test their devotion. Irik's hand tightened on Astrid's. "Do not look away," he urged. "Do not let them trick you. This is not real. Only our hearts matter here." Astrid's breath caught, but she nodded, drawing strength from his voice, from the warmth of his hand, from the bond that had carried them through storms before. "We are together," she repeated, her voice rising above the howling wind. "Nothing can break what is real." The spirit's shadows swirled faster, stronger, until it seemed the cliffs themselves might crumble. Eirik stepped forward, placing himself between Astrid and the force of the curse. "I give myself to this trial," he declared. "All of my pride, all of my fear, all of my power. I surrender it for the one I love. Let our hearts be the measure and nothing else." Astrid mirrored him, lifting her chin, her eyes steady. "I surrender my doubt, my fear, and my hesitation. I choose trust and I choose love. We face this together no matter the outcome." For a long moment the wind stilled. The sea calmed, as if even the natural world paused to witness their courage. The spirit's form shimmered, and for the first time it seemed to acknowledge the truth in their hearts. "You have proven yourselves," the voice said, softer now, yet still powerful. "The curse is not broken by wealth, by status, or by fear. It is broken by hearts that trust, by hands that give, and by courage that does not falter." A warm light began to spread from the cliffs, bathing Eirik and Astrid in golden fire, melting the snow at their feet and softening the icy wind. The shadows that had tested them dissolved into mist, leaving only the strength of their hearts shining like a beacon. Astrid looked at Eirik, tears of relief and joy streaming down her cheeks. "We did it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We survived. The curse, it is gone." Eirik pulled her close, holding her as if he could shield her from all the hardships of the world. "We did it together," he said softly. "Nothing can break us if we remain true to each other." The villagers, who had watched from below, began to emerge from their homes. They saw the golden light bathing the cliffs and the sea that had once been restless now calm and serene. Whispers of awe spread through the village. Stories would be told for generations of the Jarl who faced a curse not with swords, but with love, trust, and courage. In the quiet that followed, Astrid and Eirik walked together back toward the village, their hands intertwined, hearts light with relief and hope. Each step was filled with the simple joy of survival, of love won not by wealth or status, but by devotion and truth. Eirik paused at the edge of the village, looking toward the horizon where the first rays of sunlight touched the sea. "The storm has passed," he said, his voice low and steady. "But our journey is only beginning. The world will test us again in different ways. But now we are ready." Astrid smiled, leaning into him, feeling the warmth of his heart and the certainty of his presence. "We face it together," she said. "No secrets, no fear, only trust and love." The snow crunched softly beneath their feet as they walked through the village, villagers bowing and greeting them with respect and awe. Children followed at a distance, eyes wide with wonder at the couple who had faced the impossible and returned victorious. That night the aurora returned, brighter and more vivid than ever, painting the sky in green and violet streaks. Eirik and Astrid stood hand in hand on the cliffs once more, gazing at the swirling lights above. It was a reminder that magic existed, not only in curses and trials, but in the hearts of those who dared to love and trust fully. "Do you see it?" Astrid asked softly, pointing to the dancing lights. "The world is vast and full of wonders we cannot yet understand." Eirik nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "Yes, and whatever comes, I want to face it with you." A quiet peace settled over the land. The curse had been lifted, but its lesson remained. Love required courage, trust demanded honesty, and hearts could overcome even the oldest magic if they were true to themselves and each other. As the night deepened, Eirik and Astrid walked back to the village, side by side. Every step was a promise, every glance a reassurance. They had faced shadows, storms, and doubt, and emerged stronger. The aurora above seemed to smile in approval, a silent witness to the triumph of love and the power of trust. And somewhere beyond the cliffs and the sea, the old magic of the world whispered a quiet approval. Eirik and Astrid looked at each other, eyes shining with shared understanding. They had faced the impossible, and in doing so, they had discovered a bond deeper than wealth, status, or fear. Together they would face the future, whatever it held, hearts united by courage, devotion, and love. The village slept peacefully, the sea calmed, and the aurora faded slowly into the night sky. But in the hearts of two people who had faced destiny and triumphed, a new light burned, warm, steady, and eternal.